Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The year is 1810, 2 years since the Sikhs conquered Jammu region from the local Dogra Rajput rulers, and three members of a Dogra noble family have joined Sikh Empire service. These people will later become known to history as the Dogra brothers. Around the same time, the Kishtwar region is ruled by another Dogra prince named Raja Muhammad Tek Singh. 9 years later, the Sikhs also conquered Kashmir from the Afghan Durrani Empire, and it was around this time Raja Gulab Singh, one of the three Dogra brothers, started rising to fame. In 1820, he received a letter from Maharaja Ranjit Singh, who told him that if you want to cement your position as the Raja of Jammu, then complete two missions. First mission was to bring Raja Muhammad Tek Singh to Lahore as a prisoner, and the second mission was to get rid of Mian Dido, who was a Dogra Rajput who was rebelling against the Sikhs. Both missions were completed. Mian Dido was killed, and Raja Muhammad Tek Singh was sent to Lahore, where he was executed. In 1839, Maharaja Ranjit Singh died of a stroke, and none of his descendants were capable of ruling the empire, which would last for another 10 years. Conspiracies and assassinations became very common in the imperial capital, Lahore. Ranjit Singh's death meant that lots of noblemen as well as his own sons would fight over the throne. And during this situation, there were lots of murders and assassinations. Gulab Singh lost both two of his sons, his only nephew, as well as his both brothers to these conspiracies. And some people think this is what created the grudge in his heart against the Sikh Empire, although we are not really sure about it. In 1845, the first Anglo-Sikh War began. As per the rule, all of the Sikh Empire's allies were supposed to join on their side, but Gulab Singh just kept wondering whether he should join or not. And he didn't in the end. The Sikh Empire lost, and the British only agreed to negotiate with the Sikh Empire if they appointed Gulab Singh as their representative in the negotiations. Gulab Singh negotiated the treaties of Lahore and Amritsar in 1846. The Treaty of Amritsar officially established him as the ruler of Jammu and Kashmir. The latter was sold to him for 7.5 million Nanak Shahi coins, which were the currency of Sikh states in those days. So we can also say 7.5 million rupees. And that is something the Kashmiris hate even today because they feel like they were sold as slaves. And Gulab Singh's title was upgraded from Raja to Maharaja. Lord Hardinge, the Governor-General of East India Company in those days, writes in his letters about Gulab Singh that he was a tyrant and the greatest rascal in Asia, but he stressed that the British East India Company must be polite with him because he supports their interests. And how did he support their interest exactly? Well, as mentioned earlier, he did not participate in the war against the British. That's how he did it. And the British finally agreed that, you know what, we will give him a slice of the Sikh territory, and this slice was Jammu Kashmir. So in 1846, Gulab Singh officially established himself as the Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir. He dedicated his Muslim majority kingdom to Hinduism and began persecuting the Muslims. When mosques fell into disrepair, they were not repaired by the state, and nobody was allowed to repair them either. Such a situation continued till 1856 when Gulab Singh was suffering from dropsy, which is basically too much swelling, and so he abdicated the throne for his only living son, Rambir Singh, and died the next year. So just 1 year after Rambir Singh ascended the throne, the famous 1857 revolt broke out, but his estate remained loyal to the British and were rewarded for that. So there was lots of discrimination during this time as well. For example, you see much of before India abolished Article 370, much of the Jammu Kashmir state laws came from the laws that were created by Rambir Singh himself. So some discriminations that existed during the time of Ranbir Singh were as follows. Hindu priests and temples were sponsored by the states, but this sponsorship money came from the Muslim population. The Kashmiri Muslims were subjected to a systemized forced labor where they had to carry heavy loads across mountainous terrains for little to no pay, and they had to pay taxes for everything, even stuff like marriages and digging graves. Although Muslims were the majority in the kingdom, it was the Hindus, especially the Kashmiri Pandits and other Kashmiri Hindu groups, who had the majority representation and all the high posts in the government. And to make sure the Kashmiri Muslims were kept illiterate so that they never, rise properly, the state language was changed from their language, Kashmiri, to Urdu and Hindi, which was spoken by the Hindus mostly. Ranbir Singh died in 1885, and on his deathbed he wanted to appoint his more capable son Amar Singh as his successor. But the British approved his other son Pratap Singh. As a result, Pratap Singh came to the throne. It was during his time that the Muslim marriage tax was abolished, although other discrimination laws stood strong. Before Pratap Singh, if you slaughtered a cow, it could actually get you killed. And there is a story of someone, a Muslim, who slaughtered a cow and was fed so much salt as punishment that he died from dehydration. But now, under Pratap Singh, the maximum punishment you could get for slaughtering a cow was 10 years in prison. And during his time, the Kashmiri troops were forced to fight alongside the British in World War One. In 1925, Pratap Singh also passed away, and his children predeceased him. As a result, he was succeeded by his brother Raja Amar Singh's son Hari Singh. Now, in case you don't know, Raja Amar Singh, although a prince, he still had a lot of significance in his brother Pratap Singh's rule. So in 1925, Hari Singh ascended the throne, and he was also the Maharaja during World War One, but then he witnessed a much more catastrophic event in history, and that was the partition of India. The reason we call it catastrophic was because of the Kashmir conflict that was triggered right at this point. What happened was that the British gave each and every prince three choices. They could join Pakistan, join India, or just remain independent. The problem was that the British told each and every prince that you cannot resist joining the nearest dominion. So, if you are surrounded by Pakistan, then you're going to become a part of it. And if you're surrounded by India, then you're going to become a part of it. And if you don't, you will be forcibly annexed. And of course, no princely state had the power to resist these newly formed dominions. However, the interesting thing was geography. You see, Jammu and Kashmir state was located between the dominions of India and Pakistan. So the Maharaja thought, why not I stay independent and just avoid these two dominions? But the public did not agree with him. Majority wanted him to go away. Although what to do next was still a little bit debated. For example, while some people wanted Kashmir to become an independent state without a Maharaja, some wanted it to join Pakistan and some even wanted to join India. The turning point came in October 1947 when the Muslims of Jammu were massacred on a very large scale by mobs who were mostly Hindus. The real preparators, like the ones everybody could see, were normal mobs as well as militants from the RSS Hindu organization, although Dogra forces participated alongside these militants. It has been alleged that it was the Maharaja himself who ordered this massacre, so he could change the demographics of the state and then justify its entry into India. Although this has not been properly investigated for political reasons. But the death toll is said to be between 20,000 and 50,000 people. When the news of the Jammu riots reached the Pakistani border, the tribesmen decided to intervene on behalf of the Kashmiris. And soon, all of this turned into what became known as the First Kashmir War, where Pakistani and Indian soldiers, Indian armies, were involved. And after 1 year, the UNO mandated a ceasefire, which basically said that all nations stay where you are. So Pakistan keeps a part of Kashmir it captured, and India keeps the part it captured. And the UNO says that this issue should be solved via self-determination, or two nations should just sit and then talk about it. The problem is that neither was a proper referendum ever held, nor were proper talks done because they just fail every time. So until these talks are done, the Kashmir conflict is most likely gonna stay for many more years to come. If we talk about the current situation in the conflict, so the territory of the former princely states, India has the greatest share. India is the one that has the most territories from this princely state. The second is Pakistan, and Pakistan's Azad Kashmir region is basically made up of areas which were conquered from the princely state. And contrary to popular belief, Gilgit-Baltistan region was not actually under the Maharaja. It's a long story which we might explain in another video. And fun fact, there's also a third partner, a third shareholder, and that is China. In the 1960s, China was also involved in this conflict when it claimed some parts of Indian-held Kashmir as its own. Even today, China maintains this claim, and that's why we now have three countries claiming one region. Thank you very much for watching, and a special thanks to the acknowledgements you can see on my screen.